The Burlington Northern Railroad was a United States-based railroad company formed from a merger of four major U.S. railroads. Burlington Northern operated between 1970 and 1996. Its historical lineage begins in the earliest days of railroading with the chartering in 1848 of the Chicago and Aurora Railroad, a direct ancestor line of the Chicago, Burlington and Quincy Railroad, which lends Burlington to the names of various merger-produced successors. Burlington Northern purchased the Atchison, Topeka and Santa Fe Railway on December 31, 1996 to form the Burlington Northern and Santa Fe Railway, which was owned by the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Corporation. That corporation was purchased by Berkshire Hathaway in 2009, which is controlled by investor Warren Buffett. History. The Burlington Northern Railroad was the product of a March 2, 1970, merger of four major railroads: the Great Northern Railway, Northern Pacific Railway, Spokane, Portland and Seattle Railway, and the Chicago, Burlington and Quincy Railroad, as well as a few small jointly owned subsidiaries owned by the four. The merged railroad was initially going to be called Great Northern Pacific and Amp Burlington Lines, although the four railroads shared common ownership from the days of the James J. Hill era. The four railroads previously had unsuccessfully attempted four mergers to unify the Hill lines: 1896, 1901, 1927, and 1955. Surprisingly, the merger was finally approved in 1970, even though a challenge occurred in the Supreme Court, which reversed the result of the 1904 Northern Securities ruling. To further expand the Burlington Northern Railroad, a single track was constructed in 1972 into the Powder River Basin to serve various coal mines. On November 21, 1980, the St. Louis-San Francisco Railway was acquired, giving the railroad trackage as far south into Florida. By 1981, however, the holding company of the railroad, Burlington Northern Inc., relocated headquarters from St. Paul, Minnesota to Seattle, Washington, and spun off all non-rail operations to Burlington Resources in 1988. In 1971, BNC and AMP SFW and AMP D carried 64,116 million revenue ton-miles of freight. In 1979, the total was 135,000 per million. Most of the increase was Powder River coal from Wyoming, a fount of traffic unprecedented in United States railroad history, and one which BN had to itself until 1984. The Burlington Northern, along with handling freight trains, briefly operated intercity passenger trains. The BN had started operations just a matter of weeks before the end of service of the original California Zephyr, which had been operated by the CB and AMP-Q, in conjunction with the Denver and AMP Rio Grande Western and Western Pacific Railroads, and continued to operate the North Coast Limited, Main Streeter, Empire Builder, Western Star, Denver Zephyr, Gopher, and International, until Amtrak took over intercity passenger service in May 1971, thus becoming the last new Class 1 railroad to operate its own passenger trains. The BN also operated a commuter line inherited from the CB and AMP-Q from Chicago Union Station to the western suburb of Aurora, Illinois. On September 22, 1995, the Atchison, Topeka and Santa Fe Railway merged with the Burlington Northern to create the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railway. However, the merger was not official until December 31, 1996, when a common dispatching system was established. Santa Fe's non-union dispatchers were unionized and the implementation of Santa Fe's train identification code system-wide. On January 24, 2005, the railroad shortened its name to BNSF Railway Route. The Burlington Northern traversed the most northerly routes of any railroad in the western United States. These routes started at Chicago, Illinois and ran west-northwest till it crossed Wisconsin. From here the routes continued northwest through Minneapolis and St. Paul, Minnesota to Grand Forks, North Dakota. From Grand Forks the routes ran west through North Dakota, Montana, and Idaho to Spokane, Washington. The former GN routed through North Dakota, northern Montana, crossing the Continental Divide at Maria's Pass, while the former NP line routed through the southern part of Montana, crossing the Continental Divide at Mullen and Homestake Passes. At Spokane the route split into three. The former Great Northern route ran west to Wenatchee, Washington, crossed under the Cascade Range at New Cascade Tunnel on Stevens Pass, and descended to the Puget Sound region through Everett, Washington. The former Northern Pacific turned southwest towards the Tri-Cities, then northwest to Yakima, Washington, and crossed under the Cascade Range at Stampede Tunnel, descending to the Green River Valley at Auburn, Washington, where it connected with existing NP lines from British Columbia to Portland, Oregon. The Spokane, Portland and Seattle ran southwest to the Tri-Cities, then followed the north bank of the Columbia River to Vancouver, Washington. With the acquisition of the St. Louis-San Francisco Railway, the route was extended into the south-central and southeastern United States. Transport statistics shows BN operated 23,609 miles of line and 34,691 miles of track. At the end of 1970, it shows 4,547 SLSF miles of line, not including QNAMP-P and NAMP-N. At the end of 1981, BN showed 27,374 miles of line and 40,041 miles of track. Equipment, colors and painting. The livery of the Burlington Northern traces its history to Chicago, Burlington and Quincy Railroad. EMDGP 40 number 629 was painted in a green, black and white scheme that introduced the BN's lettering and logo. The green color was later known as Cascade Green due to the reflections of pine trees and nature along various routes the trains of the CB and AMP-Q traveled. As the final approval of the merger was approaching, the Spokane, Portland and Seattle Railway purchased 6 EMDGP 38s in February 1970 that were delivered in the Burlington Northern paint scheme. By the 1980s, the locomotives and rolling stock had an unfortunate habit of camouflaging into the scenery and causing accidents at railroad crossings. In late 1984, the BN commenced the high visibility study, which applied orange and black nose stripes and orange along the cab face on one locomotive, followed by 2 new orders of locomotives, EMDSD 40-2, EMDGP 50, and EMDSD 60 respectively. By 1987, the study did not show vast improvement of the locomotive's visibility and was dropped. In 1989, the BN reactivated its high visibility study, trying more white paint on the nose and cab face. The first unit, GATX rebuild EMDGP 40 number 3079, emerged in April 1989 with a white cab face and sill stripes, and a large BN logo applied on the nose. Dubbed White Face, this scheme proved to be a success, with only a minor change occurring in 1991 with the application of a 2-inch wide separator stripe. In October 1990, BN departed from its Cascade Green, black and white scheme on its business car and locomotive fleet, adopting Grinstein Green, Cream and Alizarin Red. This scheme was applied to EMDF9A2-BN-1, EMDF9B2-BN-2, and EMDE9A2-BN-3 of the locomotive fleet and the business car fleet. In November 1993, brand new EMDSD70MAC number 9401 received the executive colors, making a departure from the standard Cascade green, white and amp black scheme. This trend continued only on the EMDSD70 MAX until BNSF number 9837. Company officers. Presidents of the Burlington Northern Railroad: Lewis W. Menck, Robert W. Downing, Norman Lawrenson, Darius W. Gaskins, Jr., Gerald Grinstein, Robert D. Krebs. Notable locomotives. Throughout its history, the Burlington Northern had various oddities and interesting test demonstrators, paint schemes, preserved equipment. Burlington Northern 1 and 2, formerly Northern Pacific Railway 6700A and 7002C EMDF9s, were built in 1954 and later rebuilt by BN for special train service. They are currently owned by the Illinois Railway Museum and are on display and occasionally operated in Union, Illinois. The Illinois Railway Museum also owns U.3OC 5383, which is operable and is fully restored in Burlington Northern colors. Burlington Northern 6325, formerly Great Northern Railroad 325, a rare EMDSDP40, is owned by the Minnesota Transportation Museum, and operated on the Osceola and Amp St. Croix Tourist Railroad. It is restored in the Burlington Northern whiteface scheme, and is used by the museum on a regular basis. A number of cabooses that were used by the Burlington Northern have been preserved and put on display at various museums and parks across the country. Several of these are being repainted back into the paint schemes of their original owners. Environmental record. A Burlington Northern tide treating plant was responsible for the Burlington Northern United States Environmental Protection Agency Superfund site, located between the cities of Brainerd and Baxter in Crow Wing County, Minnesota. The tide treating plant operated on the property between 1907 and 1985 and treated railroad ties with creosote and fuel oil. Wastewater generated from the wood treating process was sent to two shallow, inlined ponds. This created a sludge which contaminated both the underlying soils and the groundwater with creosote and polynuclear aromatic hydrocarbons.